thumbnail picture with these beauties. These were from some of my first Run Disney races. Memories. Oh, my washing machine is on the spin cycle. Okay, well, girls gotta film when a girl's gotta film. Apologize if you hear that. I'm hoping you don't. Memories. All right, here we are, friends. Wait till you see. I took all your questions, your Run Disney / running related questions, and I formatted them in Photoshop so I could print them out. And I don't know if you can tell, but I've color coded them and organized them based on topic. So today's video is kind of a sit down chat, and we're gonna talk about Run Disney, we're gonna talk about training, we're gonna talk about running in general, all the things. And so I've broken it down. Or was that upside down? I think I'm gonna be showing you that upside down. I've broken it down into 3 categories. So category 1, training / origin story. I got several questions about like how I started running and how I came to it. And then just general training questions. Category 2, Run Disney specific questions. And category 3, general running questions. So we'll get into it. And before though that we do, I just want to again, and I know I said this when I did the shout out on Instagram, the call out for questions, just really emphasize that I am not a fitness or medical or nutrition specialist, professional, at all qualified to give you advice. All that I'm doing today here is sharing my experience. As with anything, I recommend turning to a professional if you're starting out, especially if you're starting out a fitness journey or some sort of health related journey. Check with your doctor first. It's always a good idea. Always a good idea. Check with your doctor, especially if you're like brand new to fitness and you want to start something. I also think it's a really good idea to, connect with a trainer or somebody, a coach or somebody who is trained to help you on your journey. If there are specific goals you have in mind and you're working with from a newbie's perspective or coming back from injury or pregnancy or whatever. That's just general, that would be my general advice. Okay, so now that we have the disclaimer out of the way, I'm gonna go through these. Okay, so training / origin story. What should we start with? Let's start with, okay, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how I started, because I see a couple of questions here. When did I start running? And how and when did I begin to run? Those sorts of things. So I never ran anything until I was 14 years old, and I joined my high school track team as a freshman. So it was a bit of a unique situation. I went to a very artsy private school my freshman year of high school where they didn't offer gym classes. It's just that students were required to participate in a team sport for 2 out of the 4 years of high school, if I'm remembering correctly. And I, coming from a dance background, never did sports in grade school or middle school, never ever. I did 1 year of volleyball in middle school, but again, I was at a very liberal arts private middle school, and it was not competitive or tough or rigorous. And so the longer story is I actually went to try out for volleyball at my high school and was so, took one step into the gym. It was before school started in the fall. Took one step into the gym, saw how freaking amazing and hardcore all these freshman girls were who were trying out. And I turned around and left the building crying. And I was like, there's no way I can do that. I can't even, I was too mortified to even try. Because I knew I did not have the caliber for that. It was just not gonna happen. So the only alternative that made sense to me as somebody who never did sports at all, especially not team sports, was to do running. Because running, even in a team setting, is an individual sport. So I ran track for 1 season my freshman year. After that, we moved. I actually went to a lot of different high schools. Joy. But I went to public school and it was back to gym class and I didn't have to do a team sport. Anyway, I ran 1 season on track and I found I really enjoyed running. Not so much, like I said, that I wanted to pursue it on a team level, but in that setting, it worked fine for me. We were not a very highly competitive team. We didn't really place much. It was just really a fun atmosphere and I had some really good friends and I found that I really enjoyed the 400 meters. So I ran 400 meters individual and the 400 meters relay. And that was my favorite distance and that kind of propelled me into running, kind of. I just kind of dipped in and out of it through high school just on my own for fun. I'd run around the neighborhood, here and there. I never did it consistently, but I did come back to it quite a bit. And in fact, I ran a lot my freshman year of college. The gym I was at NYU my freshman year of college, and the gym, it's in New York City, so the gym had a track on the roof. And I remember running circles and circles and circles around that rooftop, and that was the year when I really tapped into running as a way of healing and of emotional support. That's a longer story for another time, maybe. After that, I again ran off and on sporadically until, my late 20s when I got into it more seriously, wanting to train for races. So that was the origin story of that. And I never really, somebody asked when did I decide I wanted to become a runner. I never really thought of myself as a runner because I did it so casually and not, with a lot of dedication until my late 20s and through now. It's really only in recent years that I think of myself as a runner, and that's because the language around identifying as a runner has become so much broader and more accepting than before. Because I've never been competitive with it. I've never been fast or really that interested in being fast. I've always just wanted to do it because it feels good and it makes me feel strong and free. But I'm here to tell you that if you run even 10 seconds, walk 10 minutes intervals, you are a runner because you are running. Somebody asked how long into running did I do my first race? I mean, 15 years? Something like that, at least a dozen years. My first non-Disney race was the Princess Half Marathon in 2012. That's this medal. Before that, I ran a local 5K the fall before that, just to figure out the race atmosphere, and that was it. Since then, I've only run Disney races, and I'll talk more about that later because there was a lot of questions about that. So I think those are all the questions about kind of how I started. Talking about training, I got lots of questions about, do you think how to train for a Run Disney race? Do I think a non-runner could walk a 5K race? These sorts of things. Here's what I would say. I think that you can absolutely walk a 5K, especially a Run Disney 5K. I don't know about race requirements in any other setting, but in Run Disney races, 5Ks are not timed and they are not swept for the most part, as far as I know. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, but you can walk them leisurely. You still gotta get up in the middle of the night and be there at the crack of dawn, but they're not in such a rush to get you through the course because they're opening the parks. Because you're gonna finish before they open the parks if you're going out the door, out the start, but by 5:30, you know what I mean? So you don't have to run to walk a 5K. I would say if you want to train to run a 5K, for me personally, I want to know that I can run 3 miles in a comfortable run-walk pace. So my base, my low base pace would be a 1 minute run, 30-second walk interval. My current training pace is a 1 minute, 30-second run, 30-second walk pace. Sometimes with the 5Ks, I'll just jog half of them straight through because I'm excited, and that's okay, but I take it into a very slow jog because I'm always doing stacked races. I'm never just doing a standalone 5K. By the way, absolutely nothing wrong with doing a standalone 5K, and if you want my personal opinion, I think that's a great way to kind of test the waters with not only a race in general, but especially a Run Disney race, because you get the whole experience. You get the running through a park. Usually the 5Ks are around just one park, typically Epcot, and it's so fun to run around Epcot. So you get that real Run Disney experience of running through the park. You get the vibe. You can really go all out with costumes if you want, because you're not going quite as far, or not. You can just people watch. The costume watching is incredible for the 5 and 10Ks because people tend to get really into those with costumes because they're, shorter races, so it's more manageable to have like crazier costumes. I mean, I've seen some things. During the Tower of Terror 10 miler, there was a woman dressed up as a hotel luggage cart. Those like big, the tall luggage carts where like you can have things hang. Like she had a whole structure around her with like rods and everything, and she was in the middle dressed up as like the hotel attendant, the bell attendant, and she's got the cart around. I mean, I'm telling you, the people watching alone is worth it in my experience. It is amazing, and it's just the vibe. The 5Ks are always, I feel like, the most festive and fun and lighthearted vibes. All of the Run Disney races are, but that one especially. So you can totally walk those. But if you want to run, you want to be able to do the whole thing. With longer races, I would say you don't need to train to run 26 miles to do a marathon. I think most plans have you running up to between like a 20 and 26 miles. So as long as, in my opinion, if you can run 18 miles, you can run a marathon, a full marathon. But again, I'm not qualified to give that advice. That's just for me. That's worked for me. That's the farthest I trained up to in this latest iteration with the Dopey and the marathon, and that worked just fine for me. But that was after putting in months and months of lots of dedicated work. So it wasn't like I just ran one 18-mile run and then was like, okay, I'm ready. No, I ran very consistently 4 months. So that's what I would say about that. Somebody asked, do you think a non-runner could walk a 5K race? Absolutely. Especially if it's Disney, I know they don't time them, and a lot of people walk them. Even people who are running the challenges, some will elect to just walk the 5K to save their legs and use it as kind of just like a warm-up. Do you have to be an avid runner to participate? No. You can be a non-avid runner and still have an awesome time at a Run Disney race, because again, it's the vibe. The Run Disney races are very different from other races in terms of just general vibe. I'm sure a lot of races are fun and festive, but you can't beat the Disney vibe. And the people there are just so excited to be there. Most people are real Disney fans, just love Disney, love the magic, love the experience, and there's a lot of feelings of like camaraderie throughout the whole thing, I would say. How did I train when I first started running? I did not really train well in terms of following a plan or a specific way. I've always been very independent in fitness and not, but just kind of doing my own thing, making sure I'm running consistently and trying to balance out with strength and mobility. I think those things are very important. It's only in this last season that I started loosely following a training plan. And somebody did ask, let me look, do you work with a running coach? If not, how did you pick your training program? I don't work with a running coach, although I am interested in doing so in the upcoming year or whenever, because I just think it would be helpful to me as somebody who is maybe admittedly a little too independent and could use some help. I'm really considering like balancing when it comes to the physical restrictions I'm working with my feet and my proneness to injury and things like that. I just think it could be beneficial also just to have that different experience of working with somebody instead of just like muscling through things on my own. So I haven't, but I'm open to it. The training program that I picked for this Run Disney season, and it's taking me from Wine and Dine through Springtime Surprise, so it's almost a full year running program, is from Coach Heather over at Runners Without Limits. I had to think because she used to have a different channel name. It's different now. Runners Without Limits. And her program is through Training Peaks, and it's not coach based, so she's not weighing in on what I'm doing specifically, but the plan is all encompassing. She has different plans for whatever, Run Disney race you're doing. I picked the one for the whole season, and like I said, I've been loosely following it. It's helped me add more structure to my training. It definitely helped encourage me to get more longer runs in on a weekly basis, which I never did before. That helped a lot with Dopey for sure, and just endurance in general. So I have been enjoying it, and I'm still following it. I could be following it more rigidly, but again, I'm just maybe a little too independently minded. So there it is. But again, working on things. What inspired me to return to Run Disney after such a long break? I never planned to leave. Once I got into it, back in 2012, I thought I was going to be doing that pretty consistently for the long haul. What stopped me was that I got injured. I was kind of like in between stress fractures in my tibia, in my shins, around the time that I got really into running. And then I was kind of, after I recovered from the injuries, then I was really, really deep into my fertility journey, and I just needed all of my focus and attention to go into that. And then I got pregnant and had babies, and it was just like, it just didn't fit into my life at that time. But it was always kind of way back in the back of my mind that I wanted to return to that someday, and I didn't know how or when, but it was, in 2021, when they opened back up, I followed Run Disney, I follow Run Disney on Instagram, I follow their blog, I've kept up with them over the years, maybe sometimes more and sometimes less, but I've stayed connected, so I know that's how it was always there. When I saw that they were bringing back in-person races, and I believe the Wine and Dine 2021 was the first in-person Run Disney race, after everything got shut down with, the pandemic and everything. I was like, I'm gonna sign up for that, and I'm gonna go for that, because I had been way back into running during 2020, especially in 2019 and 2020, I got really back into running. It was when my body was starting to feel strong enough again. I have to feel really strong physically and mentally to run, because it's not an activity that comes very naturally to me, and I need kind of all my capacities to really focus on it so I don't get injured, and I'm very aware of that after having injuries in the past. Anyway, I had gotten way back into running. I was like, well, if they bring back Run Disney, I'll sign up and we'll see. If it works out, I'll go. And they did bring it back, and I went, and it was immediate, absolute joy. It felt like no time at all had passed. I felt just as excited. I was probably even way more excited, to be honest. I was really excited back in 2012 and 2013. Don't get me wrong, but completely different life scenario in 2021, freshly post-divorce, freshly post-lockdown, on all of the things, kind of the culmination of everything, and being so back into running, and it really was just so helpful to me, especially on my mental health journey during that tough time, 2019 through 2021. I really relied on running a lot. I did get injured in the middle there, but I came back from that. And somebody asked about that, so we'll talk about that later. But I always knew I'd go back, and I'm so glad I did. And my hope is to continue running Run Disney for the long haul. And that is always on my mind as I'm training, and as I'm thinking of cross training and strength training and mobility, is long-term endurance and safety in my body for running. More questions about training and how I run, and if I run with people. Somebody asked if I have company when I run, friends, family. No, I don't know anybody personally who lives close to me that runs. I just don't. And to me, it's a very, I feel like I love running in the races and chatting with people along the course and having, short conversations or anything, but it would probably make me kind of uncomfortable to run and feel the pressure to have to talk the whole time. I feel like I get very self-conscious about how I'm breathing. Like, I'd love to run with people for like short clips of time, but then I'm just so independent and introverted that I think I would need to know that I could also run by myself and not feel guilty about doing that. That being said, I'm gonna keep an open mind and open heart, and I'm not closing myself off to the possibility of that in the future, because who knows what the future will bring. But right now in my life circumstances, I'm the only one I know around here that runs, and it's such a meditative experience for me. It really is. It's extremely focusing and almost, it's meditative in a way that I kind of treasure it as solo time. But like I said, not closed off. So I want to put that out into the universe. I'm not closed off to the thought of running with people. It's something I'd have to have more experience with. Lots of questions about, let's see, how do I prepare for running races? Rachel says she's done 2 5Ks and I make her want to try more. Listen, you've already got 5Ks under your belt. Try a 10K. That would be the next. I would recommend going from a 5K to a 10K. Again, not professionally qualified to give advice, but just personally, back when I did Run Disney in 2012, the 5K was like, I feel like was there a 5K, or was it a family race, or was it just a 1 mile family race? I don't remember the 5K situation. I'm guessing there was one, but I just did the half marathon. Like, I trained for the half and I did the halves for all of those. I didn't do any of the other, they didn't have like the challenges quite then, except for the coast to coast challenge, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, at this stage in my running journey though, I would ease myself more into it. I would say start with the 5K, then add on the 10K if that feels comfortable, and then add up from there. That would be my advice. And I've trained for them based on the mileage. So because I like doing the challenges and I like doing the stacked races over the course of an event weekend, that's how I train now. I run 4-ish days a week, and I'll generally run them 4 days in a row. If I'm like leading up to Dopey, I would run 4 days in a row, and I would kind of mimic what Dopey did with start. The first day of running of the week would be my lowest mileage, and culminating in my highest mileage for the last run of the week. Now that I'm not doing Dopey, I'm breaking them up a little bit, but I'm still stacking them. I'm still doing 2 run days in a row, break for 1 or 2 days, 2 run days in a row, etc. It just kind of depends where my body is and what makes sense for me and what races that I am building up to. But again, I would recommend looking into a training plan or working with a coach if you really feel like you could use the extra support and help in that way. Speaking of which, just kind of like my general workout routine, somebody asked generally what my workout lineup looks like for a week. So it shifts depending on what I'm training for, but what I found that is good for my body, at least in this past year, is planning about 4 runs a week. I cycle maybe 3 days a week, and I try to do strength 2 to 3 times a week. Now, within all of that, I am dedicating a lot of time to warming up and cooling down properly and stretching. And I also do yoga every single morning, like 99.8% of the mornings. There's a handful of mornings here or there where I don't get to it, and then I'll usually do it later in the day. But the yoga is really important to my mobility and general flexibility, which is very important to running. I think for me at least, having a strong balance between strength and mobility in addition to cardio is great. I am a cardio person. I love cardio. I could definitely drop the cycling from my weekly regimen and still have a very well-rounded fitness routine, but I just love it so much, so that's why it's in there. But I kind of the cycling I'm very flexible with, and it's just more about how I'm feeling in any given week, and I filter it in a way that makes sense to me in my mileage with my running. The running is the priority, the strength and the mobility support the running, and then the cycling is really just for fun. But if I was taking time off my feet, I would cycle a lot more. Oh, somebody asked if I use my Oura Ring in my training. This is a fitness device. So I've been wearing it for a year and I love it. And I mainly purchased it to help me with my sleep habits, and it's made a huge impact in that. Just having that data has really made a difference. I'm sleeping on average an hour to an hour and a half more than I did in the year before last. So definitely making an impact there. It's really only in the last couple of months that I've started paying more attention to the metrics it's providing me about my recovery. And so I really haven't factored that into my training so much lately, but I am starting to notice it more. So I'm interested to see how that plays out moving forward. But it gives you a lot of really interesting and very in-depth metrics, not only about your sleep data, but your recovery, because it tracks your activity and it takes all that data, your sleep, your activity, and it compounds it into this like recovery index where you can see how your body literally is recovering between different metrics that your body gives out: blood oxygen level, HRV balance, all of that jazz. So it's fascinating, and I'm interested to see if I work with that more in the coming year. I'm really trying to work more on strength building this year, especially in my mid-body, my hips, my glutes, especially my hips, I would say, to help support me, because I already do a lot of targeted exercises in my lower legs for calf work and ankle mobility and strength and foot mobility and strength. So I'm taking the concentration and moving it up the body a bit. But yeah, I think that's about it. There was one more question. Oh yes, about apps. If you're not a runner at all, how do you even begin what apps to use? I would love to know if any of you have app suggestions. I don't really use coaching related apps in that way. I use Training Peaks because it's what the plan that I purchased, the training plan that I purchased that I told you about before from Runners Without Limits, that's how that plan is delivered. But it's not really giving you advice, I would say, necessarily. So if anybody knows of any like Couch to 5K running apps, I think there is a Couch to 5K running app. Actually, somebody just told me about that. I know Jeff Galloway, who does the walk run method and is in partnership with Run-Disney, has an app too. That might be a good place to start looking. But if anybody wants to weigh in here on app suggestions in the comments, please do. Okay, we're moving on to section 2. Run-Disney specific questions. So there were questions about registering and just like getting into it in general. Somebody asked, and I thought this was a great question, honest question. She says, with all due respect, the appeal. What's the appeal? It's just so far out of my budget, I can't get it. It's very expensive. It is very expensive. You have to pay pretty much for most races that are fast, more than a 5K. Some 5Ks you don't have to pay to register for, but from my understanding, most races have registration fees. Run-Disney registration fees are far more expensive than a lot of races. And that's for a number of reasons. Just the ability for them to host events in the parks takes a lot of manpower and woman power, people power. Just all the moving parts of running races in active amusement parks. There's a lot of logistics there. They have a lot of volunteers and sponsors, but they also need to pay a lot of folks to help out. The number of staff, not even just the number of volunteers, and the volunteers are amazing. We're very grateful for them. Just the number of staff alone it takes to run these things is mind-blowing. So there's just a lot of costs. The infrastructure, the building of the start and finish areas, the corrals, like the breaking all of those down so they can open the roads and have Disney still running their operations on these race days. It's just a lot. So when you think of it in the bigger picture that way, if you kind of like zoom out, there's a lot of costs built into that. And I'm sure they want to make a profit too. And they have definitely been charging more for things in recent years, and the added Club Run Disney, which we'll get into, which is an added expense, and it's got a lot of people upset, and I absolutely understand. But it's just magical. I don't really know how to adequately describe the feeling of Run Disney. It's a very personal experience, but I know there's a lot of people who feel similarly to me. Many thousands of people, in fact. I think there were 15,000 people who ran the marathon weekend half marathon, over 15,000 people. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who understand like the magic there. And to those people who, like me, are in that boat, it's money that's worth spending. That being said, if you do not have room in your budget for this kind of event, it is not ever worth going into debt for something that isn't absolutely necessary. If you need to go into debt to pay your rent or your utility bills or food or education or whatever it is, or to pay for your car, it's never great to be in debt, right? But sometimes we gotta do what we gotta do. But do not go into debt. Do not go into debt to run a Run Disney race. It's not worth it. If you have the money and it sounds like something that you're really interested in, try a 5K. 5Ks are obviously the least expensive. It's still very expensive for a 5K, but it's fun. There's a lot of expenses that go around a Run Disney event too, based on if you want to stay on property. That's gonna get pretty pricey. I recommend staying off property. I really enjoy the Holiday Inn. It's very competitively priced. It's a lovely hotel, and you can walk to Disney Springs in under 10 minutes from it. But you have to have your own transportation if you're not staying on property to get to and from the races. But the appeal is just, there's nothing like it. I think I touched a little bit on the feeling of camaraderie, the lightheartedness, it just feels like pure joy, and you're still achieving a physical endeavor, but you're doing it in the happiest place on earth with the happiest runners you'll ever know. These are not people who are really super serious. I'm sure there are exceptions to that case, and there are people who, run to place and all of that, but it's not a big focus at these races. Like, placing isn't the priority. It's the experience. It's the joy. And it's Disney. You get to run through the parks. You get to see characters. I mean, people stop in the middle of races and wait in lines to do character photos. Where else are you going to do that in a race? I mean, it's just amazing. And crossing those finish lines just feels so good. Just feels so good. So I don't really know how to adequately put it into words, but I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea. So there was a kind of an adjacent question to that. How serious are the races? As a newbie runner, I'm not competitive. Perfect. Run Disney is perfect for you. If you've been wanting to try a race, you're not competitive. I personally don't like being around extremely competitive people. It makes me very uncomfortable. This is not competitive at all. There's a really supportive atmosphere. There's a lot of camaraderie. And like I said, it's really not about the placing. It's about the experience. People stop and they take pictures. You'll see a lot of people walking a lot of these races. You'll see people from every walk of life and from running the gamut of fitness ability. And they're all doing it and having fun, and that just makes it even better to me. It's like it feels so open and accessible. So I think this is the perfect, least serious race you could possibly do. It's perfect. Go for it. Someone said, it all seems overwhelming. I don't know where to start. So do you mean with running in general or Run Disney in general? I'm going to take this from the Run Disney perspective. Just register. Register for whichever race seems like the one you want to do, and then follow a training plan. Run Disney offers some through Jeff Galloway's program. Like I said, they're partnered up with him. That's great to start there. If that feels overwhelming to you, like a run-walk method with a very detailed plan, very helpful. I would start there. personally, and go from there. There's so much information out there now on planning a Run Disney racecation, as they call them, like picking where to stay and what transportation, if you should rent a car, what to eat, how much time you spend in the parks. These are all personal things. For me, Run Disney races are about the races and not necessarily the amusement park side of things. But that being said, I'm hoping to branch out this year and dip my toe into spending some more time in the parks. But I do prioritize the races and kind of resting my body. So I hope that helps a little bit. Some questions about signing up registration. It is really intense. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's intense. It's stressful. The virtual queue, I call it the spinning ball of stress because it feels like, I don't know, it's stressful. One of the perks of Club Run Disney is that it takes this element of stress out of it and you get early registration opportunities depending on what level you are at. And I'll talk about that in a minute too. But if you are doing general registration, here are my tips on signing up. Usually they open the registration on registration day, which they have outlined for the entire next season of races when the registration days are, and I'll put a link to that blog post below if you'd like to see. General registration opens usually at 9 a.m. Central Time, so convert to your time zone on that day. My recommendation, what I do personally, is I start checking the website about a half an hour before. I make sure I carve out my schedule if that's available to me. Sometimes you gotta be places and that's just what it is. Before you've done this, make sure you've set up a Run Disney account, that you have your billing information and all of that already in your account. And be sure you're signed into your account on whatever device you're using to register before you hop on the virtual queue, because that will streamline things for you. And make sure, I would just recommend like saving your password or doing whatever you have to do to save your password on your device. So if it makes you log back in again, it's easy and fast to do. And you don't forget your password and have to be like flustered looking for it. So I make sure I'm like checking the site about a half an hour before. They've been tightening up registration a little bit in the past year so that they're not opening it quite as early. They used to open it about 8:30. And they hadn't done that in the last few races. So I just start checking that site like probably every few minutes starting at 8:30. And then as soon as I'm on the virtual queue, I'm watching that like a hawk. And making sure that I'm not blinking and missing when I get through. And what the Run Disney queue does is once it kind of clicks in at 9 a.m. and compiles the list of everybody that's waiting, you will get a number, like a wait time. And it'll tell you how long your wait time is. Now that wait time is not accurate. Like I wouldn't set your watch to it. Sometimes it jumps from like 100 minutes down to 5. And you're like, what? Or sometimes you're stuck at 100 minutes and it feels like forever. So I would just make sure you have some time. Try not to panic. As long as you're on the virtual queue as soon as it opens, I think you'll get whatever race you want. That being said, prioritize the race that's most important to you. Challenges tend to sell out fast and 5Ks tend to sell out really fast, in my experience. If anybody has any different experience and wants to weigh on that, please do. But that's what I would do. I would prioritize my challenge and then hope I can add in the 5K if I want to do that, if they're separate. Hey guys, Editing Jen here. So I filmed this Q&A before registration opened for the Disneyland Half Marathon. Now, as a Club Run Disney member, I was able to register a week early for those races. I had 2 registrations available to me as a Platinum member, and I got bib for the Dumbo Double Dare Challenge and the 5K. That was 2 separate registrations, and I got those bibs, and I'm super grateful for that. I hopped onto general registration when it opened because I wanted to try for the yoga. And I knew I might not get it because it's a small group that they allow, but I was not prepared. I mean, I feel like every time I go through general registration, then by the way, this was the first time I was able to use Club Run Disney for early registration, which was really nice. But every time I've gone through general registration in the past, it's been like it's been different in some way that's stressful. So this time, my experience was, and I heard this from other people too, is that they did not open the queue at 9 a.m. like they usually do. Sometimes, whatever. Generally, that's the aim. The virtual queue opened kind of, it seems to me like in a rolling way, because I feel like some people were saying they were getting on like at 10 after 9. I didn't get on till after 9:15. And it was immediately an hour wait, but then that number jumped, like I just said, it does. And I think I got in through the queue and was able to look at registrations at about 9:50-ish. So that was less than an hour. Obviously, if I didn't get on till after 9:15, it was probably like just over half an hour. And it was gone, and the challenge was gone. And then I was trying to help somebody secure a 5K bib, and that went before I had a chance to like type in all their information. And then the half marathon, I mean, it all just like went so fast. And I heard lots of people had trouble getting on, like I said, in the first place. But then a lot of people who did get on early, and it wasn't just one person who said this, it was like, I've heard it from many places, like they got everything they wanted in their cart and they went to check out, and then the billing failed again and again and again. So it was just a mess. So all this to say is that, yes, general registration is frustrating and stressful, and you might not get what you want. I still stand by prioritizing what you want. I know some people put everything they want in their cart before they check out. If they want a challenge and a 5K and or yoga, whatever, if they want all those things, they'll put them in the cart and then try. I personally would just prioritize. Sorry, I didn't shut down my email, so it's beeping. But yeah, it was a you-know-what show. And I know it was disappointing to lots of people, but I don't want to discourage anybody. I just want you to be like emotionally prepared that registration is tough. Okay, back to the show. Is the price worth it? Well, we kind of already talked. I think so, but that's very personal, right? It's like, is that what you want to spend your money on, or would you rather spend your money on something else, or do you need that money to pay your bills? Don't go into debt for Run Disney. I'm just going to kind of go and order these questions because I want to keep them together, but it's hard to do. So I got a couple people asking me if I'm doing the Coast to Coast Challenge and or the Disneyland 2024 Half Marathon Weekend. I have registered for the Disneyland 2024 Half Marathon Weekend with the hopes that it will pan out. It is in my budget. These are non-refundable races. Just keep that in mind. If you get sick or can't attend for whatever reason, you do not get your money back. So keep that in mind going in. You put that money into that registration, you're not getting it back. I am fortunate to be in a place where it's within my budget to register for the races that I'm interested in and hope for the best. Like, I want the option. So I am planning to go to the 2024 Disneyland Half Marathon Weekend. I've signed up for it. I'm making plans for it, and we'll see. I'm hopeful that my body will be okay in a year to get there. I'm really hoping to do the Coast to Coast again. That registration hasn't come up yet. It's coming up so soon. But that would be to do the dopey. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to be the dopey the weekend before, and then the full gamut of races at Disneyland the week after. I told my physical therapist about this last week, and he was like, whatever. He was the one who was like, don't do dopey. When I first told him about dopey last year, when I was doing it in 2022, he's like, don't do that. And I was like, okay. And then I did it anyway. And then I did it a second time, and now he's just like, girl, if you can do those things, of course you can do that other thing too. That's fine. So he believes in me. He believes in me that I'm nuts enough to do it all. But that is my dream, would be to do both. If I can only pick one, if push comes to shove and I just can't swing it, schedule, body, whatever, I will prioritize the Disneyland Half Marathon because I haven't run in Disneyland since 2013, and I would love to have that experience again. So I'm going to prioritize that, but I'm hoping to sign up for the whole shebang, and we'll see. Somebody asked me what my favorite distance to run is. I'm guessing you mean in a race, and I've kind of, it's the last year, I've settled into thinking that a 10K is my favorite, and that kind of makes sense because my favorite training runs are hour-long runs. And I don't quite run a full 10K in an hour. I probably run upwards of 5.5 miles, somewhere between 5.3 and 5.5 miles in an hour. A 10K is 6.2, so that would be, you know, longer. It's kind of my comfortable spot. I feel really good, and I love the non-Disney 10Ks because it feels like 5Ks are great, but they're very crowded. They go very fast. It feels like you blink and it's done. I mean, there's usually a lot of park time in the 5Ks because it's so short, but it just feels like it goes by too fast. And whereas a 10K, you get twice as long, you're usually running in a park for just as long, but also some roads, so you have some time to let the experience sink in. There's more characters to look at. There's more just fun to be had. And it's not so long that it's like, I mean, a half marathon is twice as long as that, so it feels like a lot longer, you know? I love the 10K. All right, let's talk about Club Run Disney. So Club Run Disney, if you're not familiar, is something that Disney added. I don't actually know when they added this. Was it in 2020? When did they add this? But it annoyed the heck out of a lot of folks because what they did was they used to have early registration perks for DVC members, annual pass holders, where you could have early registration, that sort of thing. They took all that away, and now they charge an arm and a leg for you to get those things, and then some. And I get it, it's really frustrating. But it's also things that I want, and again, it's in my budget, and it just makes my Run Disney experience better for me. So there are 3 levels. I believe it's silver, gold, and platinum. I don't know what silver gets you, but I think it's only gold and platinum that get you early registration and early access to the merchandise and a separate big pickup place. There's quite a few perks, and I'll put a link to it if you'd like to read more about what the different perks are. Registration, so somebody asked specifically about when Club Run Disney registration was. It was just like signing up for a Run Disney race with a virtual queue and everything. And when I signed up for it for the 2022-2023 season, registration was May 3rd of 2022. And that registration was active. My membership was active starting in October of 2022 and runs through the 2023 season, so it ends with Springtime Surprise. And I'm guessing then that they will offer an opportunity to resubscribe as a member. I'm hoping they offer that as a existing member to people who want to, you know, re-up their membership or whatever, and then open up to general registration later in the spring. And then once again, registration will start again registration will be in the spring, and then the membership officially starts in the fall. So here are the perks that I get at the platinum level. I get early registration, so 1 week before general registration for all of the next season's races. So for all of the 2023-2024 season races, that's Wine and Dine 2023 through Springtime 2024, as it stands right now, I get to register a week early. So there's none of that registration anxiety with the spinning wheel of anxiety in the virtual queue. I did this once now. I registered for the Disneyland half with the early registration. They sent me, I do know the difference between gold and platinum. With early registration, with gold level, you get 1 registration per race event, whereas with platinum, you get 2. So that means that I was able, as a platinum member, to register 1 week early for the Disneyland Dumble Dare Challenge, which is the 10K and a half, the Disneyland Marathon Weekend. And I was also able to register for the 5K, so that was 2 separate registrations. Then you get like a little swag. I got a really nice jacket and a pin, and there was a virtual 10K race where I got a really nice medal just for Club Run Disney members. That was back in the fall. That was really fun. What else? Oh yeah, the early access to the Run Disney merchandise at Expos, definitely worth it. I have missed so much merchandise in the past because of, they have the virtual queue now, which I have not personally experienced, but from what I hear, it helps a little bit with spacing things out, and they are kind of clamping down on people buying ridiculous numbers of things to resell on the resale markets. But basically, Here's how it worked for marathon weekend. The Run Disney like general expo didn't open till 10, and that included bib pickup, the expo itself, the health and fitness expo, and then the merchandise tent. It's not actually in a tent, it's like in a field house. That all generally opened at 10, whereas as a Club Run Disney Platinum member, I got to go at 8 o'clock in the morning and picked up my bib. It was in a separate area. I didn't really have to wait I waited maybe like 10 minutes instead of however long, and got all my stuff. They had it all packaged up in a nice little bag for me, with a Club Run Disney really nice luggage tag. And then they filtered us right down into the merchandise area. So it's in a completely separate building from where general registration picks up their bibs and stuff. And they had the shirts and everything in one place, whereas where in the general registration you get your bibs in one building and your shirts in a different building. This was all just like in a nice pre-done package for me. It was a lot less chaotic and just a lot more consolidated. And then I walked right into the merchandise. I got in at 8:30 at the platinum level, and it was not chaotic, and everything was available that I wanted, and it was just a much more pleasant experience. And the other perk that I get with this, and I think this might be one of the most, if not the most controversial perk, is that you get, at least with platinum level, I don't know about the other levels, you get upgraded corral placement where applicable. So let's give you an example. The last in-person Run Disney event that I did was Springtime Surprise of last year, before the marathon weekend. And I didn't have Club Run Disney active at that time. And I was in Corral D. And somebody did ask about corral placement. How does Disney decide which corral you are to start in? I really don't know. You can have proof of time, but it's very competitively paced, the proof of time, and I'm just never gonna reach that pace, I don't think. I mean, never say never. I don't know. Wow, it's so dark. Sorry, you guys, the sun is disappearing. I've been talking for so long. Oh, it's an hour-long video. No sweat. Okay. So I really don't know how they decided beyond that, because you don't have to enter a pace if you're not giving proof of time. So I really don't know. But one of the benefits, perks of Club Run Disney, at least at the platinum level, is I went from being in a D corral to being in a B corral for marathon weekend. And that made a huge difference in my running experience. Not that there's anything wrong with the D corral, it was just a lot more crowded. And a little bit more difficult to navigate for the first half of the races, whereas in the B corral I felt like I had a little bit more space. Still enjoyed myself thoroughly, don't think you need it, but I do appreciate it because I feel like it gives me just a little bit more wiggle room, a little bit more breathing room. Speaking of corrals, there were a couple corral related questions. Why should you get to a corral over an hour before the race? I think this is very specific to Run Disney races because they are running these races in active amusement parks that are open to the general public, you know, in the mornings. And so there's just a lot of organizing, of setting up and taking down the start and finish areas and the corrals that they have to do, and then also be able to open for normal operations in a day. So I think that's the biggest reason. I mean, I really don't know because I don't work for them, but that would be my best guess why they have you come so early, because they really need everybody to be in place so that they can get everybody out on time and get everything cleaned up in time for them to open the parks. That would be my best guess. Can you come and go from your corral if you need to use the potty? Short answer is yes. I would strongly recommend going to the bathroom before you get into your corral. In my experience, they have lots of porta potties throughout the start area, as well as near the corrals. There are usually some porta potty options. I would get in there before you go into the corral. I've seen people come in and out of the corrals, and it's fine. You can just weave in and out of people. Most people are sitting on the ground because you're there for so long. I don't recommend jumping over the corral fence to get to and from the bathroom. I see people do this every time, and every time I'm like, friend, do not fall on your face. That would be such a sad demise of your Run Disney experience. Like this is not worth it. Just go around. So short answer is yes, but maybe try to plan to go before you get in the corrals. And if you have to go out and come back in, that's fine. Just make sure you're leaving enough room, wiggle room, because they will start moving the corrals up 15, 20, sometimes even 30 minutes before the start. So I would just keep that in mind. Oh my God, this video is so long and I'm so sorry, but I want to answer all your questions. Oh, this person's done Run Disney since 2013 and asked if I'm a fan of the famous cheese in the snack box. No, I am not. Probably 10 years ago, did they have the cheese 10 years ago? I think they did. I would have eaten it and probably enjoyed it because I liked that kind of stuff back then. Not anymore. Did you see BB Brooke is going to be at the Princess Expo, her first in-person event? I did. I'm so excited for her. If you're going to the Expo, please check out her booth and please cheer her on. She's one of my favorite small businesses to support. She's just a great entrepreneur and just so enthusiastic and cares so much about what she does and her product. And please go cheer her on and check her out and give her some support. I will be filming. I'll show you her booth in my princess videos for sure. Okay, so this person's exploring the Run Disney website and they suggest no headphones. I had no idea. I feel like they do that for safety reasons. I run with headphones on. They're asking, could I go without? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a lot of entertainment on course, and Run Disney's very good at that. And again, costs, it kind of all plays into that. There are some stretches, especially on the long road stretches, where it gets a little dark and quiet. So I run with mine on. I just keep the volume down very, very, very low. And it's mostly, like somebody else asked actually, what I listen to. Where was that question? Okay, I think there was a question about that, but I just keep mine on very low, mainly because I train with Peloton classes running, so it's more of a security blanket for me. I see a lot of people running without headphones. I don't think you need them. You can get at the Expo, they sell these aftershock things that I'm actually gonna check out at the Princess Expo that don't go in your ear, but they're apparently still really good quality. I don't know, interesting to think about. But I don't think you need it. It's more of a personal preference thing. I keep hearing about balloon ladies. What on earth are they? So how they do the pacing for the races that are 10K and longer. Like I said, no pacing requirements for 5K. It's a 16-minute per mile pace cutoff before they will sweep you. And this is a 16-minute per mile pace from the very back of the very last corral. So keep that in mind when you're training. You want to be able to make sure you can maintain that with a bit of a cushion, I would say. So what the balloon ladies are these women, although I think I heard that they were thinking about letting a man join their ranks at some point, who hold that 16-minute per mile race pace from the very back of the very last corral for the entire race. They have balloons attached to them so you know who they are and you can see them from a distance. And they're your visual reminder to stay ahead of them so that you are not swept from a race. From what I understand, even if you are swept, you still get a medal, but you get shuttled off course. So they're really just a visual way for you to know how far ahead you are of that cutoff, of that being swept cutoff. I listened to a podcast, again from Coach Heather, her podcast Runners Without Limits, where she interviewed somebody who's from the Balloon Lady troupe of, I don't know what their official name is, and it was fascinating. So I'll try to find that podcast and link it for you. But really, it's just a visual cue to you to stay ahead of them. I would love to know what you do for warm-up, stretching, both training and at races. I've really gotten into a very good practice with warming up for running and all fitness, really. I start with my core, because if my internal temperature is at a nice, healthy warmth, then my body's ready. Starting from my center, then the rest of my body is, more warm and ready to work. So I start with 5, 10, 15, 20, however long, a minute core, dedicated exercise, and then I will go into a running specific warm-up. I do Peloton led ones because I'm a Peloton user, and they've got great warm-ups. I'm sure you can find great warm-ups that are not through Peloton on the internet. And this is dynamic stretching, dynamic movements. This is not static stretching. You save that for after. So it's basically like mobility with movement, right? Quad stretches, calf stretches, but not static, not holding them. Some like low-key plyometric kind of things. I honestly don't do a very good warm-up before races. And it's something I've been thinking about, especially in the last couple of races, that I'd like to be better at in incorporating more of that. But it's just, I found it hard when you're sitting in the corral for so long, and then by the time you stand up and start scooching forward, you're just so packed in around other people. It's like, we're all packed in like a can of sardines. What I will do is I'll kind of just like bounce around on my feet a little bit. They always have music playing and the race announcers going and the DJ's talking, and like there's a lot of people are dancing and moving around. So I'll do just some like kind of little, just in my own personal space, movements like that, calf raises to get my body awake and going. But there's just not a lot of room, I found. For me personally, to do a warm-up an hour, like to have the room to do a full warm-up, I'd have to do that like an hour before the race started, and then to me it kind of like defeats the purpose, just to have the space to do it. But I just do what I can in the amount of space that I have. But I have been thinking more about that lately. Oh my gosh, it's so dark that I can't read. I can't read the questions anymore. Does the cost of the races get you a ticket to the park, or is that separate? The cost of the races gets you absolutely nothing outside of the races and the bibs that you wear and the race text. That's all you get. And the the food, the snack box they give you at the end, and all the things it takes to pay for, running a race, right? You don't get any extras outside of that. So it can get very, very expensive, especially, like I said, if you're staying on property, if you want to do parks. So you really can't just budget for the race itself. I recommend looking at what your entire race weekend experience will encapsulate for you. What's high on your priority list is staying on property. High on your priority list, that's going to be pricey for the most part. Going to the parks gets pricey, so it can be a very expensive endeavor. It really just depends on your budget and your priorities. But yeah, I wish they would give you something. Even with the wine and dine one, where they have like the runner specific race party at Epcot on the evening, you have to pay for that. It's like $100 to pay for that. It's like, why don't they just give that to you? I don't know. Do I have to join the virtual queue to go to the expo? Now, I actually haven't experienced the virtual queue for the expo myself, because they just started bringing that in after I joined Club Run Disney. So like I said before, I have a separate entrance for that, but I looked it up for Princess, and this is what I saw from Run Disney. Virtual queue is only needed for Run Disney merchandise shop on the Thursday, February 23rd. So that's the first day that the expo is open. You don't need to join virtual queue if you're going to the expo on Friday or Saturday of that weekend. There is no expo on Sunday. You have to pick up your bib one full day before your first race, FYI. So like for instance with Princess, my first race is the 5K on Friday, so I absolutely have to go to the expo on Thursday and get all my stuff. If you are just doing the half marathon on Sunday, you technically don't have to go to the expo until Saturday. The merchandise will be gone by then. Just FYI. Like if you want a Spirit jersey, there is not going to be a Spirit jersey left on Saturday. Now I have gone back to the expos on subsequent days to like get a thing or whatever. Like for marathon weekend, I wanted to get the marathon weekend ears and to make a little thing, little headpiece for the 10K day. So I went the second day of the expo. I did not need virtual queue to get in it. So I'm guessing that stands for across the board right now in races, that you only need the virtual queue for the first day of the expo. It's so dark, I can't read these anymore. I know this is hard, but anything you can offer regarding cost and how to do Run Disney but low cost. I don't know how to do Run Disney low cost. I'm not sure that's available. When you take in all the components, unless you live close by or you can stay with somebody, Bunk up with people, like share room costs, buy your food from a grocery store, like stay somewhere where you can cook maybe. Don't eat out as much, but they don't really like give out discounts. You can run with charities, but I don't know, do you still have to pay for your bib? And then you have to fundraise, so that's something too. And I do not know a lot about running with charities. I have raised money for charity now with Dopey Weekend. I raised money for Give Kids the World, and thank you to everybody who donated to that. That was fantastic, and I would love to do that again. But there are ways that you can run with a charity, and that's a way to get a bib. But do you still pay for your bib? I don't know how that works. I think you do. What's your favorite thing about running a Disney race? The whole vibe. It's the vibe. 100% the vibe. It is just joy. It's still a race and you're running and it's hard, but it's pure joy. I can't explain it. Which Run Disney event has been your favorite so far and why? That's really, really hard to answer. I love them all so much. How do you pick a favorite? I really love Wine and Dine for the mood. It has a kind of a mood to it. I love the marathon weekend for the let's go the distance kind of feeling with all the dopey people. There were over 8,000 people who did the Dopey Challenge this year, which blows my mind. I haven't been at Princess in a long time, but Princess is a very special vibe too. It's got a princess vibe. And Springtime Surprise was actually, I think that was my favorite event of the 2022 races I participated in person because it was just so fun. It was such a fun, because it's shorter races, 5K, 10K, 10 miler. It was very Hollywood Studios centric. It had a very, very fun vibe to it. So it's all the vibes, right? Let's just bring it back to the vibes. Where do you keep your iPhone while in the race? So I wear pockets. I wear pockets. I wear bike shorts or capris under whatever I'm wearing. It's usually like a dress or a skirt of some sort in recent races. And I just make sure I have a pocket in those shorts or those capris. And that's where my phone goes. My phone goes on my right leg and all the other things I'm carrying go on my left pocket. And pockets are great. Can you walk the various marathons to participate? To a point. You just need to be able to maintain a healthy cushion on that 16-minute per mile pace cutoff. Just keep that in mind. What's the slowest pace you can have without being swept? I just said that. I mean, they say 16 minutes per mile, but make sure I would make sure you're training comfortably at a 15-minute per mile race, just to make sure you're gonna make it. That's just me personally. Could you tell us about the process of parking and navigating to the corrals? I actually really prefer, somebody else asked about using the Disney transportation or not. I used Run Disney buses for Wine and Dine 2021, and then I went to having a car for subsequent races since then, and I much prefer having the car. Absolutely nothing wrong with the buses, they're great, but I would prioritize getting the first bus, which means you're getting up even earlier. Having a car means I get about a half an hour more sleep, which I will take. And I just I feel very comforted knowing my car is there. I think it's just like a personal safety thing. Maybe it makes no sense, but it just makes me feel better to know that I have a vehicle there and I have a way to get myself to wherever I need to go if I need to get somewhere after or during a race, if that makes any sense at all. But I find, like I said, I've been staying at the Holiday Inn for the last few races, and at most I think I've had to drive 15 minutes. It's to get to usually you're parking at Epcot for the most part. And even with road closures and stuff for the races, it's only a 15, give or take, minute drive. And they funnel you into the parking lot just like they do when you go to the park for the day as a person visiting the park. They have a lot of staff ushering you through the parking lot, telling you exactly where to park, and then you just got to remember where you park or put an air tag in your car so you can find it afterwards, because Lord knows at in the morning, you might not remember that you parked in Dino 16 or whatever. Yeah, it's the same. And then you just walk. So there's a little bit more walking if you're parking. You gotta walk to the start area, whereas the buses will drop you right at the start area and then pick you up. The bus system is pretty seamless. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule, but it seems like they've got that handled pretty well. I've heard sometimes they don't and sometimes they do, but for the most part, they get the people there and they bring you back, and it's all very well marked at the finish line, like where to find your bus, and they've got staff out there telling you where to go and answering questions depending on where you're staying. But the Disney transportation is only offered to guests staying on property. If you're staying off property, you gotta find your own transportation. And I like having the car. I just feel like it offers me, like I said, a bit of like a security blanket kind of feel, and also just some flexibility. And I like having that little bit of extra walk before and after the race to warm up and then to kind of shake out on the way back. It helps. I need to keep moving, low key moving, but I need to keep moving after I'm running any distance at all, just to keep my body loose and limber. Oh my God, it's so dark. It's legit nighttime. I can't see it all. Oh my gosh, you guys, this video is so long. I'm so sorry. Are there family races that kids can take part in too? Yes. They discontinued those for a while, I believe, and they're bringing them back. I know at the Disneyland Half Marathon, they're gonna have the baby race again and all that. Like, I think they're bringing it all back. So I'll put a link to the Disneyland race. Check into that, because I'm pretty sure that they're bringing those back. Kids up to at a certain age can run the 5 and 10Ks. I don't know what the age cutoffs are. I'll try to look that up and put them in for you. I'm sorry, I didn't have the foresight to look that up beforehand. But I've seen kids on the courses for the 5 and the 10Ks, and I love seeing the kids holding their parents' hand while they run. It makes me cry every time. Okay, I can no longer see. It's dark. It's nighttime. I need my flashlight. Hold on. Okay, last but not least, we're gonna talk about general running questions. Hi! So creepy. Why did I choose to film this in the evening? I do not know. Should I put the light on? Let's put the light on. You guys, I can't see it. Gosh darn thing. Hold on. Oh my gosh. It's legit nighttime. Okay, well, it's not quite as good lighting, but that's okay. Oh, and I'm running out of battery. Awesome. All right, a couple people asked about socks. I love these. Socks are personal, gear is personal, right? I'll talk a little bit about gear. These are the Injinji socks. This is the brand. They're toe socks. I used to think toe socks were the weirdest thing ever. How could that be comfortable? Make so much sense. So I wear toe separators when I run. They're just these little silicone toe separators. For the structural issues I have with my feet, they work for me. Again, this is a medical professionally advised thing, so I wouldn't advise you to wear those unless your medical professional has advised you to do that. But toe socks were kind of necessary for me to wear to be comfortable without having any rubbing on my toes when I'm running, having toe separators in. So that's why I started wearing these, and now I swear by them. I love them so much. I don't get blisters with these. They keep my feet very happy. I like the short cuff version, but they also have a medium cuff version and all different iterations for hiking and everything too. So those are my socks of choice. There was somebody else who asked about gear. How do you know what clothing to wear for outdoor running? Any guidance you can share? So this is really just, you gotta trial and error things. It's really what your body feels comfortable in. I cannot tell you for you. I know for me in general, I am dressing 10 degrees for weather that's 10 degrees warmer than the temperature says, 10 to 20 degrees, depending on the humidity. If it says it's 50 degrees out, but it's a 98% humidity point, I'm dressing as if I am going to be walking, not running, but just being outside in 70-degree weather. If it says it's 15 degrees out, very low humidity, obviously at 15 degrees it's not gonna be humid, I am dressing for temperature as if I were outside at 30 degrees or 35 degrees. And that's just kind of what I think about. I tend to run hot, I tend to sweat a lot, so that kind of ratio works for me, but this is not a one-size-fits-all thing. You really just need to try. When in doubt, I suggest just wearing layers that are easy enough for you to carry or stow. If you have some sort of hydration vest or a pack that you can just like tuck things into, hats, gloves, easy, you know, ear warmers, easy to take off and shove into pockets. Layers, easy to take off, tie around waist kinds of things. Things that are harder to change are like the leggings you're wearing, the base layers you're wearing. Trial and error that stuff, for sure. Okay, somebody asked about blisters, prevention, handling from a Disney trip or running. How are you doing it? Again, the toe socks help. I also use Body Glide all over my feet for races. I really don't use it in training even. Sometimes I did for some of the longer runs. But Body Glide on the feet, you don't have to use Body Glide. There's Salty Britches, there's other things, I don't know, other brands you can use. That's just the one I use. They sell it at the Expo. Helps a lot. And also just making you're wearing properly fitted shoes. Somebody else did ask about shoes. Best starter running shoes for someone just starting out, even good walking shoes. Again, this is so individual. It's not something I could advise you on. I would say go to your local running store where the people are trained to help you with this, even walking for sure too. If you want to get into a serious walking fitness regimen, go get fitted. They have ways to see what would work best for you. They usually have pretty flexible return policies at those stores, so if something doesn't work and it's something they've recommended, etc. Would love to hear more about your post-race recovery process. So immediately after a race, I come back, I walk back to the car, which again helps me kind of shake things out, and then I come back and I will do a shorter stretch, maybe like a 10-minute post-run stretch, and this is usually a Peloton-led stretch. Again, these are available not through Peloton, I'm sure on YouTube or whatever, that's just what I do. Then I'll take a shower just to rinse off sweat, salt, and just bring my body temperature back to like homeostasis. And then after that point, I'll usually go on a longer walk. So lately, what I've been doing is taking myself to Disney Springs, walking around for a while and getting a nice big meal. And then later in the day, I will do a very low-key yoga, like a stretchy yoga practice that's maybe like lower body focus, stretching hips, those sorts of things. Depending on the length of the race, I might put my legs up the wall for 10 to 20 minutes. And I love to stay at a hotel that has a bathtub because I will end my race day with a very long soak in a very salty bath. I go to Target or wherever and I buy big bags of Epsom salt when I'm there, and I take a very concentrated Epsom salt bath. These things help me a lot. Making sure that I'm hydrating, I'm still alternating between electrolytes and water for most of the day post-race, just as I do during races, and making sure that I'm eating in a way that settles well for me. And that's not something I can advise you on because that's very individual. These are all just things I do for myself. But long-term recovery, like I would say coming off of dopey, I took 2 full weeks off running, but I was back on the bike like 2 days after I got home. I took 2 days off fitness altogether, but I was still on my feet a lot, running, around the house. I was still on my feet. It was not like I was just sitting for 2 days, but I wasn't doing any dedicated exercise. And then I got right back on the bike and it felt really good, but I eased back into it as if I were a newbie starting again. I started with low and slow, even on the bike, just like very short classes, low impact classes, and then I was able to build that back up. And then I took my kids to Disney World like a week later, so I was walking a lot. I wasn't running, but I was walking a lot and pushing a very heavy stroller. Because yes, we had one last hurrah with the stroller at Disney World. But that's what I did for recovery this time, and that seems to have worked well for me. When I picked back into running, again, I just took it low and slow and built back into it, and same with strength. after Dopey, I just kind of approached it from a newbie perspective and started with Pilates and body weight, and then worked back up to my regular, like, full training plan, regular strength, lifting weights and all of that. So I hope that helps. That's what I do. But again, I'm not professionally qualified to give advice there. How do you plan a trip around a Run Disney event? So there are lots of different ways to do this. You can make it a family trip. You could not. You could make it a friend's trip. You could not. You could make it a solo trip. You could not. Here's what I do. I prefer to make it a solo trip, because it's just not logistically possible for me as a single parent to bring my kids to a Run Disney Race weekend. It's impossible. If they were teenagers and self-sufficient and I felt comfortable leaving them in a hotel room in the middle of the night by themselves, sure, we're not there yet. It's gonna be a while. And even then, I don't think it'd be as fun because I need to take it easy. I don't wanna be running around after races. I like to focus on the races themselves. You can make it a total Disney vacation and do all that, but it's adding more to your plate in terms of not only time on your feet, but just activity. Like, you're tired. You've been up since 2 in the morning. You're tired, you know? I want to go to bed at 7 and not have that be a bummer for anybody. So that's why I choose to make it a solo trip. And I like to stay around Disney Springs because I haven't prioritized going to parks in the past. Like I said, I'm hoping to dip my toe into that this year because that's just a boundary I want to push with myself. It's something where I've just felt weird about. And whenever I find something I feel weird about doing solo, I'm like, why is that? Let's dig a little deeper. We gotta dig a little deeper. Anyway, so I'm hoping to experiment with that this year and trying to spend some time in parks by myself and kind of push my boundaries there. But I prioritize all those things I said about post-race recovery. Having a nice hotel room where I can spread out. The Holiday Inn has a lot of room. I get plenty of room to unroll a yoga mat and do all my stretches and yoga and put my legs up the wall and all that. I like being able to walk to Disney Springs and walk around and get a good meal. It's very accessible. I usually have a car with me so I can drive anywhere I want. And I like to keep it pretty low key. And it's a really different experience. Like, I went to Marathon Weekend the first weekend of January and I did all that. And then I went back to Disney a couple weeks later with my kids. Completely different experience, all in the same place. And beautiful for different reasons and fun for different reasons. And a really interesting way to experience a place that I really love from different perspectives and in different ways. So it really just depends on how you want to approach it, but you definitely, if you're doing any Disney related things, eating, going to the parks, dining reservations, going to the parks, staying at property, you gotta plan that. You gotta plan that as soon as you're available, as it's available to you, as soon as reservations open up, park passes open up, whatever. Can we get a vlog at Walt Disney World post-race out and about, old school style? Would love it. So I have filmed these for my private community on Patreon. The last couple of in-person race events I did, I shared kind of like what I'm doing when I'm not running vlogs. And it's been fun to share that. I might do something like that. Like I said, if I do decide to dip my toe in and go to a park, I might vlog that experience. I haven't decided if that's going to be just for my community or for the general public or not, but I do film those things and I share them. It's just I'm choosy about where that content goes. But I'm glad that you are interested in it. Thank you for your interest. Oh my god, I promise I'm almost done. Why so many? Oh, I got a bunch of questions like this. Why so many Disney races instead of local races or other destinations? I'm telling you, I've said this before and I'll say it again. If Disney has races in other destinations, I will go there. Bring back Paris, I will try to make it happen. But if it's not Disney, I'm really just not that interested. Like, I'm not gonna say never, right? But right now, like, if it's not a Run Disney race, I really just don't independently have a desire to do it. Nothing against them, I just don't want to. Bring Mickey Mouse and I'll show up. If Mickey's there, I'll do it. Somebody asked if if I could have a link for this shirt. This was from the Marathon Weekend Expo, and it was exclusive to that, so I'm sorry I don't have a link for that. How did I overcome an injury? So my latest injury was a foot injury, and that was in summer of 2020. I took a full year off running. I went to physical therapy. I saw a sports doctor specialist who did shockwave therapy. That helped me a lot. And like I said, mainly, I didn't run for a whole year. And I really took almost 6 months off of any weight-based cardio until I got my Peloton in December of 2020. So between July of 2020 and December 2020, I didn't do any cardio that wasn't just like walking. I did impact cardio, that's what I meant. So just a lot of rest and work in physical therapy, seeing a specialist, and really easing back into it. Packing must-haves, extras for a Run Disney newbie. If you saw my video next week, I talked a bit more about that. How do I store or display my medals, bibs, and keepsakes? I have medal racks that I have yet to hang, but I have purchased medal racks, and I will link the Etsy shop where I got them. They are fun and beautifully made. Oh, somebody asked about music. Yeah, I listen to Peloton, not curated playlists when I run, but I like the playlists that the Peloton instructors put together for the most part. And I think that's mostly it. There's one question that I wanted to address because I just got so many messages and comments about this, and quite frankly, it pissed me off. So I'm just gonna address this one last thing. This person says, how do I feel about the photos sharing how I look, not how I edit? I'm not really sure what they mean by this question exactly, but here's what I want to say about my photos. If I'm ever editing a photo, which I do, edit the lighting, the tone, the color grading, or the lighting. I don't edit my body ever in photos. I will change the color tone or the color grading or the lighting to make it look nicer in general. That's it. That's it. I don't have any of those body editing apps. I don't know how to use them, and I have no interest in doing that. I think they're horrible. I think they should be banned. I think they should be outlawed. I don't like it. There's so many issues with that. That being said, of course, I'm going to pick and share the race photos where I feel like I look my best, where the ones where I feel like the photo reflects how I feel on the inside. Oh, somebody did ask about race photos and if they're included in the price. You don't have to pay for race photos. Race photos are included in the price of your registration. So there's another thing I forgot that is included that I didn't say. But it's, you guys, think of it like this. Let's say you've just done something that's really important to you, that's really special to you. Let's say you just got married and you're going through all your photos from your wedding photographer. The ones that you pick to share with you online, with your friends and family or a wider audience, are going to be the ones where you feel most confident in, like where you feel like you look your best, like where it feels like a reflection of how you feel. Beautiful, strong, confident. Out of all the race photos are notoriously not always the most, flattering, right? Because you're running, it's awkward. They're catching so many people coming by. Like, they're not always gonna be the best angle, your absolute like best photo ever. In fact, mostly they're kind of scary looking in my experience, but you do get some gems. I've found in every race, there's at least a handful of photos where I'm like, yes, that reflects how I felt. Strong, confident, happy. And those are the pictures that I download. I don't download and save all of them. I only download the ones that I like, and those are the pictures that I share. And maybe I lighten them a little bit because they're dark, because mostly you're running in the dark, and maybe I change the color balance a little bit, but that's it. That's it. So please, just stop. Stop with the body shaming. Stop with the accusing things, assuming things that aren't your business in the first place and are just frankly not true, it's just stop. Just stop. You're not gonna put up a wedding photo of yours where you're like that moment where the photographer caught you from an awkward angle where you have like a double chin and you're kind of making a face because you're like mid-sentence and laughing or something, right? You're just not. So that's what I'll say about that. Enjoy your races. If you are running this weekend, please come say hello. I'd love to see you. I'd love to chat. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear about your journey, give you a high five or a hug, whatever you're into, or just like talk from a safe distance, whatever works for you. Please do not hesitate to come and say hello to me. Thank you for hanging with me for this super long, super dark video. I apologize for the lighting shifts, but I talked for an hour and a half, so I don't know what this is gonna turn into. But maybe it'll be a two-parter, or maybe I'll just cut a bunch out. Or maybe I'll just put the whole thing up and just let it fly. I don't know. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your support with my Run Disney journey. I got so many lovely comments also about just inspiring people and motivating people, and that's one of the reasons I share is sharing the joy of it, and also it's a way to share it, so to open up others' eyes to it. So it might be something that brings joy to you too, and you might not know about it otherwise. So keep sharing. Post your race photos with pride. Most people who are criticizing race photos, I guarantee you, are not running 48.6 miles in 4 days. So there you go. And be proud of who you are and your accomplishments and what your body can do for you. You are a runner, no matter how much or how little you run, and nobody can take those finish lines away from you. All right, friends, let me know what you're registering for, what you're hoping for this year, what you're running. I will be here at Princess. I hope to bring in springtime, and I hope to be at Wine and Dine, and we'll see what next year brings. But I would love to see you. Say hi, take care, stay safe, happy running. Bye.